All right, welcome to Plan Weekly, the exact start. Okay, am I kicking? Yes, I am. All right, I don't know if this belongs in team updates, but question around design transition. I don't know what the plan is for Annabelle's switch, but it looks like Alexis commented on here. Annabelle begins her. Well, Alexis, are you on? Yeah, you
Yeah.
are. Okay.
And I don't want to speak for Annabelle, so she'll be back tomorrow if you want to ask her. But her transition plan is starting next milestone 12.5. She'll be 50%. So that's like 10% support to Holly and I, and 40% working on issues. So you could still tag her. And we'll just kind of like ramp up Holly and ramp off Annabelle, if that makes sense.
Okay. So if I have any questions on the 12.5 stuff, should I continue pinging both of you, all three of you, or
I
what
mean,
should
you
we do
could
there?
default to, like I said, like whoever's in the issue or all three of us. I know it seems like a lot, but for now, I think that's fine. And
Okay,
if we're not relevant, we'll just ignore it.
And you're not
cool.
planning to like split like one do project management, one do portfolio management or anything like that, right? Just
No,
both
we're not
cover both.
splitting right now.
Cool.
Cool. And is there a plan to hire, I forget, I know we talked about it before, but is there a plan to backfill Annabelle's position on as
There
a UX
is, we're
designer?
interviewing people right now. So
Cool.
hopefully we get some awesome people in the pipeline.
Nice. Okay. Ethan.
Hi, Plan team. I'm Ethan Strike from the AppSec team. I'm here to announce that we're looking to start integrating stable counterparts into the development teams so that we can work with you more closely to, do a number of things, but hopefully help identify security issues earlier instead and reduce. With the goal over time, of course, is to reduce the number of vulnerabilities that get released to production. But I've included a link in the document with some of our goals, but since this is new, our engineers have a lot of leeway to define sort of their roles with each team. With that said, I want to introduce Costel Maxim, who has volunteered to work with Plan. And I don't know if Costel, you just want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, so hi. Okay, I've been in GitLab like, I don't know, like 4 months, 4 or 5 months, close to 5 months. Probably some of you guys know me because I probably, I don't know, assigned issues from other groups to you guys, but yeah, we gotta start somewhere. So whenever you guys are working on stuff that you think that, security could help, just ping me and I'll try to look, and also it will help to have an idea about, for me to have an idea about what you guys are planning to release soon and what could be tested, close to, I don't know, beta alpha, something like that, so that I can try it and test it before it's released.
So I think previously the process was if we wanted a AppSec review before merge, we would ping the AppSec team. Are we better off pinging you individually now? And then asking you to review a merge request at that point, Costel, or is that not the right point to get you involved?
We can work pinging with the AppSec team, and I don't know, depends on time zone and all that. Well,
I would recommend continuing to ping the AppSec team, just because we do have an engineer on rotation for that as well. The Costel will actually be, hopefully he'll be like helping you do some like threat modeling and stuff like that. So as new model or new features are being developed, he can identify things that we should be working on during the development process, if that makes sense. But for now, I would continue to ping AppSec, and then, it might be redirected to him, or yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification there. And hi, Costel, as well. Nice to see you in person.
Nice to meet you all.
I'm next. So I was just going to share my screen here, and because we're going to put this on YouTube and hopefully make it public, I was going to share Okay, that's good. I was going to share the board, but while I was logged out, so I don't accidentally show a security issue. The problem I have right now is that Zoom is not telling me what any of my windows are. So it's making it quite challenging to find the right Chrome window. So just bear with me a second. I'm just going to close everything that's not the one I want to share. Oh, right. No, there we go. I've got a pop-up from Catalina. That's why. Sorry. Donald, did you want to take your item and I'll just fix my computer and then hand it back to you?
Yeah, sure. So mine was somewhat related. Just as we were planning out 12.5, I noticed that there's a few issues that are still in either workflow solution validation or workflow problems validation. I think there's only like 2 in problem validation. And I was just wondering if we are feeling pretty good about getting those into one of the build phases by the start of 12.5, which is ideal. Like as we're going through and kind of weighing stuff, because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sean and John, but we're not weighing stuff that is unweighed, that has no weight until it gets to planning breakdown. So we have quite a few things that we've committed to in 12.5 that won't have a weight until we move into a build phase. So Gabe commented
actually
a little
right now
bit.
we're doing both, just because not necessarily everything. So like, for instance, if we assign a bug to a milestone, that might, when I say that might not get, I might forget if I put a bug in a milestone to put planning breakdown on that, for instance. And because it's a bug, there's normally less planning involved because the outcome is normally sort of, already sort of pretty well defined. But what will probably make more sense is to just use planning breakdown and then just move those things into planning breakdown first. So thanks for bringing that up. Yeah.
Bugs aren't so much of a problem. It's mainly the larger, like the deliverables or the features that are they're not completely set, which makes it somewhat tough to add a weight. I mean, it'll be kind of a larger swag or a larger guess, but I don't think so. Are you all on features and deliverables, Sean? Are you adding weights to stuff that are in solution validation?
I didn't specify any of that to the people asked to do weights, so probably they will be going through those. But I noticed that, like, for instance, the multiple milestones issue. So we plan to be able to let merge requests and issues have multiple milestones. That's still in solution validation, so I guess technically we shouldn't be weighting it, but we can probably know that it's going to be big. Certainly from the back end side, like probably from the front end side too. So yeah,
exactly. I'll read Gabe's because I think he's got a bad connection. He says, hopefully, I think we can finalize project management UX to a sufficient point to start the build phase within the next week. I think the UX folks should weigh in on this as the bulk of the effort is in their court. UX folks, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the issues right now. I think they're all mostly assigned and they look mostly done. So.
Okay, so maybe we just need to go through and move them to a build phase.
So I'm sorry, Donald. Go ahead.
No, it's all right.
From the portfolio side, I think most of them are on the roadmap. They're on the roadmap side, and I have a big session with Holly and Alexis today to kind of come to final decisions on some of that. So I feel pretty confident we'll get those ready for you guys. But we'll go ahead and update them, and we'll ping you as soon as we get there.
Cool. Sounds good. You ready, Sean?
Hopefully. I had to quit Zoom and restart it, but I think I'm there. So should now see a Chrome window with the plan Kanban board. So I just wanted to sort of step through this. So we've got I just filtered it by the 12.4 milestone. We've got 29 things that don't have a workflow label at all. So some of these are fine. Like, this is something that Brett's just taken because, like, we're not the kind of company that requires people to only work on things that were previously scheduled. People do have the ability to manage their own time. Same, I'm guessing, with this one from Jan. We also have a couple of community contribution issues in here, which I think were further up. Yeah, so there's some community contribution stuff in there as well, but there is quite a lot in open, and some of it's in the design project, so maybe that has a separate thing, but we should probably look at those. Then we've got more than I realized in the early workflow stages. So we've got, like, this in workflow start, some in problem validation, some in solution validation. These in planning breakdown, these two we added during the milestone. So that's why they got missed. So I just need to move those to 12.5 so they actually do get broken down. The refactor burn down chart backend logic to support burn down charts in boards, I just noticed doesn't actually have a group label. So it won't show up on my board and it won't show up on John's board. So that's probably why it's it's not been picked up by anybody. So I think we've just completely missed that, basically. What else have we got? Scheduling. I'm not really sure what 12.4 and scheduling still means, like semantically, but this is assigned to Wei Mengs, who's does work at GitLab in support and is can be considered kind of a community contributor here. And then this one doesn't have a backend or front end label, so that's probably why that's been missed. What else? So then, yeah, so the main sets, we've got a pretty equal split between ready for development in dev and in review. So we've got 20 in review, 27 in dev, and 22 in ready for development. That means that we won't be done with the stuff. So ideally, I think at the end of a milestone, we would have nothing left of this line, because if something's in dev, we know that we won't necessarily, guarantee that the development will be done, but we should have started development on pretty much everything by the time we get to the end of the milestone. So we probably want to have a review through those because there's 22 items there, and I think John, Donald, and I can do that sort of async and talk about that, but I think it's worth doing. We've got a few blocked things that I think we should maybe, I don't know, Gabe, if you're using an issue template to create the planning issues at the moment, but maybe it's worthwhile adding a sort of grooming step to that, where we look at blocked items in the current milestone and just see if we can unblock those or move them forward somehow, because we don't want block to be the place things get lost in, essentially. So, like, for instance, we know that this one is blocked because we are working on the view real-time updates of issue and merge request sidebar is blocked on some of these GraphQL items to add further attributes to the GraphQL API. So those are in review, so that's fine. But because we can't visualize that in the board, we probably should just walk through them one by one and just double check. But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff done, bunch of stuff in verification, and like I said, a bunch of stuff in review. So I'm pretty happy with how things look overall. I know that the epic tree is basically done. Issue MR description changes are sort of in review and might not be in 12.4, but will be available soon. This inherit children epic start and due dates. Alexandra has been working diligently over quite a long database review process because this is a surprisingly complicated database query to fix that. And then we've got a bunch of other cool stuff in there as well. So I'm going to stop sharing. Did anybody have any questions about that? Basically, my point is I think we should make some explicit steps to, see what's on the left-hand side of in dev when we do planning for the next release, and certainly at the end of the milestone, and also Anything left of ready for development, probably halfway through the milestone, I guess, we need to go in and check and like say, like, is this actually on the right milestone? What are we doing with this issue? Because, and my understanding of it, like being in workflow scheduling and being on a milestone doesn't really make sense. Certainly being on the current milestone doesn't really make sense, because if it's on the current milestone, then it's scheduled. So it shouldn't be in scheduling. And if it's in scheduling, it won't necessarily show up for people to work on.
Yeah, I mean, so looking at that, I think aside from the top one, it looks like there were bugs that were found during the milestone.
Yes, possibly. So this one, like I said, is kind of a special case because it's being worked on by somebody who, well, actually both of these are being worked on by people who aren't directly in the development team. So Wei Meng works in support. Russell's obviously our technical writer. Yeah, that's possibly just that we just need to tidy up the labels on those and we don't need to make a process change. But I just wanted to sort of talk through some of this stuff. I'm not going to go through it all because I feel like I've taken quite a bit of time already. But I think these are useful things we should try and work out now that we're using this process. We should try and like keep, because like a build board for like, you know, the backend team won't include solution validation, problem validation starts. They'll all just show in the open list. So, you know, we shouldn't really have stuff in the open list. And it's mostly a case of just adding workflow labels to open list stuff, I hope, especially if it's assigned. But the more we do that, the easier it is to see the current state. Does that make sense, Keenan?
Yes.
Yeah, cool.
I wanted to mention that there are some open issues, issues in the open column that are tests that have failed at some point. And the process when we are managing these failures is to create an issue to not lose track of it. But I think we will have to change the process in the quality department side because it's not aligned with the process in here. And it's also, we have other priorities as well sometimes that we can't achieve the milestone that is defined. So I will discuss that with the rest of the quality department in this.
Thanks, Valmir. So just to be clear, like if you want the development team to work on it in quality, it's fine to just add the workflow ready for development label. It's just that if it doesn't have a workflow label at all, it won't show up. And similarly, in the case of some of those, I see that they're missing a group label. So for my team, I look at a board that's scoped by group project management. And for John's team, I assume he looks at boards scoped by group portfolio management and group certify. But if something has none of those labels, we just won't see it. So
yeah, I've been adding the group labels in the issues that I know them, but still there are some that we, like in the quality department, we have a process that if it's an issue that is related to a feature that is not integration related, it's part of the product, it should be P1, and if it's P1, it should have the current milestone, and it should have a due date of 2 weeks from the moment that the issue was found. But this is not usually achievable, I would say. Yeah,
well, the other thing is like we certainly can't achieve the due date if we don't see it, basically. So like it needs typically a backend label, but you know, for most spec failures, I'd say it's probably a backend issue. But like, you know, sometimes it will be a front end issue. But if it doesn't have either of those labels, again, Donald's team will be looking at a board filtered by front end. Mine and John's teams will be looking at boards filtered by back end.
Yeah. In some cases, it might be a testing related issue.
Yeah, and actually, maybe that's another thing, and maybe this whole thing should have been in process workflow section. Sorry. Previously, Donald and I did do a check, like using a board to check, like, you know, column for back end, column for front end, and then the open column means something that has neither. We could do the same for the groups and for front end and back end to make sure that we don't have these like orphaned issues, I guess, that's because if it's in the open list on those boards, it won't be seen by the front end or the back end development teams, which is fine if like a technical writer's working on it, or a test automation engineer like you, or a product designer like Holly or Alexis. But if we do want front end or back end engineers to work on it, we do need to add those labels so that they actually see it on their boards. So that was a long sentence. I'll make a note about that in the workflow section and try and like collate these thoughts. Gabe, I also see that you said that you've been deliberately not, because the list is full, because you were waiting for more available capacity downstream, which is a very good point. So I take it that means that's what you're saying about the scheduling versus ready for dev section.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not really much point in shoving things into one list if they're not going to get worked on any faster. That makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think it's just if we get to this point in the milestone, then like, you know, because the milestone also communicates something externally, like, you know, to the wider community that like, you know, this is something that we're working on in 12.4. We're probably not working on these issues in 12.4, so we should probably also move the milestone. But that's kind of a tension with the way we use milestones and the way we use these workflow labels right now as well.
Yeah, I think ultimately what will help us is getting the point where we have a burn down chart for our board or for our team, you know, because that pretty much alleviates everything, and you can look at it in one glance and be like, are we on track or not? And then
you don't have to scroll
a lot sooner.
A bunch like I just did. Sorry, the other thing there that I just remembered that hopefully we're getting soon is the work in progress limits, where they will highlight a board list if there's too much stuff in that list, which is also going to be really helpful for us and for everybody else, I think.
Yep.
Cool, right. I need to go and write a bunch of stuff down from what I said just there. Valmir, do you want to take your item, please?
Oh, yeah, sure. So just to bring some awareness that last week, one of the tests that we wrote as part of the enterprise test gaps was failing due to a feature that had changed. The behavior of the feature had changed, and the test was failing. And I imagine that this was failing in the merge request as well. So if you notice that QA tests are failing there, please notify someone from the quality department before merging so that we can address something and not have like these false positives. And it can also be the case of real bugs that we're letting pass because of not having that much attention in this case. So yeah, just to bring awareness, and thanks Donald for pointing out the related MR.
Cool.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me. Silence means yes here. Cool. Okay, so Epic Tree feature flag has been on for GitLab org with only, so far that I've seen, positive reception. Woohoo! But I think now we want to start thinking about whether we should default that to on, or if we should turn it on for everyone, and then if we should default it to on and try to get it into 12.4. What are everyone's thoughts on that?
I think Annabelle was driving that from the UX side. Is that right? I haven't heard anything from her that there's anything that we should turn off. John, I don't know if you've heard anything from your team about, like, I think Yaka was working on the back end last, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have an issue to actually switch it off to remove the feature flag in the code. So far, I haven't had any negative feedback about it, but yeah, there were a few issues on the front end a couple of weeks ago, and we kind of deferred them, but I haven't checked up in a while, so I couldn't tell you if there's still bugs. All I've heard is positive things, so switch it on,
so
see what happens.
Just to give you a background, like when we enabled this feature flag first time, there were two obvious issues that came up. One was not preserving the older order of items in the tree view. Like in the older design, we had two separate lists for issues and epics, and whatever order was of items in those two lists was not carried over onto the new design. So that was first bug. Second bug was that group milestones were not automatically showing up for the issues, which they did in the older UI, but they didn't in case of tree. So both of those bugs got fixed, and that's when we re-enabled it on production. So right now, both those bugs are no longer present in the tree UI. Another thing to note here is that currently on production, at least for GitLab org group, where we have enabled this flag, you cannot reorder items across each other. Like you cannot move an epic onto the issues list, and issues cannot be moved over to the epics section. Although they appear in the same tree, you cannot do the interspersed ordering, so to speak. But we have an OpenMR, which is currently under review. It has front-end changes approved, and it is currently under database review because it involves some migrations. But Yarka has worked on that MR, which finally allows us to do interspersed ordering. So what that would mean is that once that MR is merged, we would have a full feature parity with the older UI, where user can reorder items however they want. But instead of two separate lists, we would have a single tree. So when we say that we want to remove feature flag and make this feature available to general audience, we would do that only once we have that last MR, which allows us to do interspersed ordering get merged into master, because then we will have entire feature on par with the older UI. So we shouldn't be skipping anything when it comes to redesigning the way things look on Epic page. So yeah, just to put out there.
And what's the status of that last MR? Like, are we actively pushing it?
So yeah. So it is currently in review. There are some comments that Ian has left for Yarka to do. Obviously, it involves some critical backend changes because it involves some migrations. So you want to make sure that it is thoroughly reviewed from database perspective before it gets merged. So that is the last status of it. Although we are hoping that all the feedback that we have received for issues will be addressed by hopefully end of this week or at max end of next week. So if not in 12.4, then at least in 12.5, we should be able to get that MR merged into master and then eventually remove feature flag if we decide to do that.
Okay, so we were trying to get that in 12.3. We found the issues. We kept the flag on. So I guess I want to just verify, like, so we are saying we don't think it's going to make 12.4 because then I need to update my release post work.
The interspersed ordering MR, is it?
So yeah, so we're not.
For 12.4,
we're not going to turn the feature flag off, so we shouldn't put it in the release post.
Yes, because we are not removing that feature flag at least for 12.4, given that it is 16th October already, and the last MR, which would allow us to remove the feature flag, is still in review, and I don't see that getting merged at least by tomorrow. It might get merged maybe by Friday, but I don't see it getting merged tomorrow at least, because there are some changes that still need to be done. And even once that MR gets merged, we do not want to remove feature flag. We would leave the flag open for GitLab org group on production so that we can see how interspersed ordering behaves on production, because we haven't really had a chance to test it on production yet. So once that MR gets merged, users would automatically be able to do interspersed ordering on production. And if things go fine, if we don't encounter anything else on that feature, then we can open a third MR, which would remove the feature flag and make the feature flag.
Cool, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah, I did a review of the backend changes today, and if this will make it into 12.4, it would be really last minute merge, because there are some additional changes which needs to be done, and also it's as Kushal mentioned, it's still pending database approval. So this is not. I don't expect this would be merged today, for example, or tomorrow.
So with the interspersed ordering, is that the same feature flag as the Epic Trees feature flag then?
Yes, I believe it uses the same feature flag.
Okay, so this isn't really a question then, because we've decided that we don't want to turn it on for everyone until we get interspersed ordering in there. Is that right? Are we all on the same page there?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So then disregard my question. We're not going to turn it on for everyone until some point in 12.5. So then, yes, Keenan, I think you want to remove that from the release post until next release, until 12.5 release.
What's the rationale for not putting it in now and then adding that later? Just curious.
Because it's missing that one last item to have full feature parity with how it functions now. So ideally, we don't want to remove functionality from a customer.
You can reorder it. You can reorder though issues within an epic and epics within each other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, that's that just my personal opinion. That's parity, because before there was no tree, and you could reorder. You could reorder things on the same level relative to one another, which you can still do. So like being able to add or move an issue from one epic to a new parent epic is an enhancement. I would argue, and it just seems like I think a lot of people are waiting for this, and it would be in their best interest to get the value sooner rather than later, if that makes sense. But
So,
it's your call, but just my input.
yeah, so Gabe, when you say that the intersperse ordering would allow users to change parent epic, that's not the case. That is still something that we need to work on. So technically, it's not an enhancement that we are doing right now. We are just allowing full reorder. Even if that third MR that we spoke about gets merged, it won't allow users to change parent epic just by doing drag and drop. So just to clarify that. Obviously, in order to allow changing parents, that is obviously an enhancement, but it is still another MR that we haven't worked on. We just wanted to get the full reorder going on. And as far as why we don't want to make the feature GA before that MR gets merged is because all the items in the tree are shown together. And for us, not allowing users to move an epic between two issues or issue between two epics was just because of the backend limitation. We didn't want to not implement drag and drop at all just because of the backend limitation we had of not having intersperse ordering. But finally, when we figured it out, we wanted to make sure that if we are showing all the items in the tree, then let's make full drag and drop as well possible. Instead of showing a weird UX where a user will be seeing all the items in the same tree, and yet dragging an item to a certain part of the tree would show that it is not droppable. So that was the basically idea of not enabling it for everyone.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, and the third item is mine, which is around sidebar refactor, although Alexis has already responded. So this is just a question around UX. Like right now we have this contextual navigation on the left side of the page, and it has that expand collapse button at the bottom of the sidebar, which is fixed, but that's not the case for right sidebar. Although even right sidebar allows us to expand or collapse. The older UX there is because that right sidebar is really old implementation at GitLab even before we had the contextual sidebar on the left. So it is around design discussion like whether we want the expand collapse UI to be exact same for both the sidebars for consistency. And yeah, I opened the design issue to discuss this further because it involves a wider impact change that involves multiple product areas and not just plan in general. So in case you have any feedback, feel free to leave it in the issue. Okay, that is it. I think workflow is where Sean has put out some points, but yeah, no need to.
Yeah,
So
I just wrote down my notes from earlier there because that's probably where they belonged, but I've just assigned them to me, so I'll create issues from those. But yeah, just what I talked about earlier. So yeah, I think that's it. Thanks everybody. Donald will post the recording to YouTube soon, I guess, and have a great week. Bye.
Thanks everyone. Bye.